On a quiet afternoon in September 1954, the convent of San Giovanni Rotondo was filled with an extraordinary silence. It was not merely the absence of noise, but a heavy, profound stillness that seemed to press against the ancient stone walls. The Franciscan brothers noted that something different was floating in the air, a presence almost palpable that made even the birds in the courtyard stop their singing. It was as if the natural world had paused to hold its breath. Padre Pio was in his humble cell, kneeling before the wooden crucifix that had accompanied his prayers for decades, its surface worn smooth by the touch of his wounded hands. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. His face, usually marked by the weight of suffering and deep serenity, transformed. His eyes, dark and penetrating, are ignited with a luminosity that seemed to originate from a source far beyond the physical world. He murmured in a low voice, "Brother Francesco." He was speaking to his cell companion, who sat in the corner reading the Holy Scriptures by the fading afternoon light. "Come closer," Pio whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Come and be a witness to what the Lord grants me to see in this moment." Brother Francesco, though accustomed to the mystical experiences of the saint of Pietrelcina, approached with trembling reverence. He knew these were not moments to be taken lightly. What he witnessed that afternoon would change his understanding of the mystery of death and eternal life forever. Padre Pio had begun to describe, with astonishing clarity, the exact moment a soul was abandoning this world to enter celestial glory. "I see Giuseppe," he said, his voice trembling with a mixture of joy and sorrow. He was referring to an old peasant farmer, a simple man who had been his spiritual son for years, and who, at that precise instant, was agonizing in his humble farmhouse several miles away from the convent. "His soul is rising," Pio narrated, staring into the middle distance. "It rises like a white dove, radiant with purity, shedding the weight of its earthly shell. The angels are descending to escort it, a legion of light, and I can see the smile of the Virgin Mary as she extends her maternal arms toward him." The description given by Padre Pio was so vivid, so rich in sensory detail, that Brother Francesco felt he could almost visualize the scene himself. "Giuseppe walks now on a path of golden light," the stigmatic seer continued, a tear streaming down his face. "And coming to meet him are all those who preceded him on the way to the Father's house. I see his wife, who died 10 years ago. She is young again, vibrant and beautiful as she was on the day of their wedding. I see his parents, his grandparents. They are all surrounded by an indescribable light that does not hurt the eyes, but fills them with an infinite peace." Hours later, when a messenger arrived at the convent to inform the friars that Giuseppe had passed away exactly at the hour Padre Pio had described his vision, the news did not surprise those who knew the extraordinary gifts of the Capuchin friar. However, what truly impacted the community was the testimony of the deceased's family. Giuseppe's daughter, Maria, related that in his final moments, for her father had opened his eyes wide and exclaimed with a smile of absolute happiness, "I see Padre Pio coming to accompany me. I am not alone. How beautiful is everything I see." This was not an isolated case in the life of Padre Pio. During more than 50 years of religious life, the saint of Pietrelcina was a privileged witness to the most sacred and mysterious moment of human existence, the transit of the soul from earthly life toward eternity. His visions regarding this process were never vague or symbolic. They were extraordinarily precise, detailed, and consistent, as if he possessed the supernatural capacity to physically penetrate the veil that separates this world from the next. Dr. Giorgio Festa, who served as Padre Pio's personal physician and close confidant for many years, meticulously documented these extraordinary phenomena. In his testimony, written years after the saint's death, he relates, "In more than 30 occasions, I was a direct witness of how Padre Pio described with millimeter precision the moment of death of persons who were located miles away. He not only knew the exact instant of passing, but could see the state of the soul, the reception that awaited it in the hereafter, and even the final words pronounced by the dying." One of the most impacting visions witnessed by Dr. Festa occurred during the bitter winter of 1948. Padre Pio was celebrating the Holy Mass, the church packed with freezing pilgrims seeking hope. Suddenly, in the middle of the consecration, the moment when the bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ, he stopped. His hands remained elevated, holding the chalice. But his gaze drifted toward an invisible point on the horizon, piercing through the stone walls of the church. The faithful present noticed that tears of pure joy began to roll down his cheeks, wetting the altar cloth. After several minutes that seemed eternal to the congregation, the saint completed the ceremony. But upon finishing, he went directly to Dr. Festa in the sacristy. "Doctor, I have just witnessed something indescribable," Padre Pio confided with contained emotion. "The soul of Sister Teresina has just been received in paradise. I could see how Christ himself came down to receive her, accompanied by Saint Teresa of Avila, to whom she was so devoted. The moment was of a beauty that no human word could express. Her soul shone like a diamond polished by years of loving suffering. Sister Teresina was a Carmelite nun who lived in a cloistered convent in Rome, hundreds of miles away from San Giovanni Rotondo. Padre Pio had never met her personally in the flesh, but he had maintained a spiritual correspondence with her for years. When Dr. Festa telegraphed the Roman convent to verify the vision, the response confirmed that the sister had passed away exactly at the hour of Padre Pio's Mass. Even more chilling was the detail that her last words had been, "I see the Lord coming for me, accompanied by my Holy Mother Teresa." This ability to see the arrival of the heavenly host suggests that for Padre Pio, the communion of saints was not a theological concept, but a visible, interactive reality, that he lived with one foot in the dusty roads of Italy and the other in the celestial court. But the visions of Padre Pio were not limited solely to the moment of transit. In many instances, he could also perceive the eternal destination of souls and the stages of purification that some had to traverse before attaining the beatific vision. Father Agostino, his spiritual director during his early years of priesthood, registered in his personal diary numerous cases in which the saint of Pietrelcina had seen souls in purgatory and had been able to describe their process of purification. Purgatory is not a place of torture or cruelty, Padre Pio explained to those who consulted him, trembling with fear about the fate of their deceased loved ones. It is a place of hope. It is like a hospital of the soul, where the last wounds of sin are cured before one can contemplate the glory of God. The fire there is not of destruction, but of love. I have seen souls there who radiated an immense joy amidst their pain because they knew with absolute certainty that their purification brought them closer every moment to the definitive encounter with infinite love. During a night in November 1952, Padre Pio experienced one of his most extraordinary visions regarding this state of being. He was deep in prayer when he felt he was transported spiritually to what he described as the antechambers of heaven. There, he could contemplate thousands of souls who had completed their purification and were preparing for the final encounter with the Holy Trinity. It was like an infinite procession of light, he related subsequently to his superiors. Each soul had a particular luminosity that reflected the virtues they had cultivated on earth. I saw mothers who shone with the soft and warm light of maternal love, priests who resplended with the gold of pastoral charity, religious sisters who irradiated the silver of purity, and martyrs crowned with the ruby of their blood spilled for Christ. In that vision, Padre Pio also glimpsed the precise moment these purified souls entered the divine presence. "There are no human words to describe that instant," he confessed, his voice often breaking with emotion when recounting it. "It is as if the soul expands to encompass the entire universe and, at the same time, concentrates into an infinitesimal point of pure love. I saw how each soul, that upon contemplating God face to face, understood instantly the entire meaning of their earthly existence. All the trials, all the sufferings, all the inexplicable tragedies and joys, they suddenly made sense, and they exclaimed with infinite gratitude, 'Now I understand. Everything had a purpose. Everything was love.'" The testimony of Father Alberto d'Appolito, who served as Padre Pio's personal secretary during the final years of his life, adds fascinating details about these mystical experiences. The Father did not only see the moment of transit and the reception of the soul in heaven, Father Alberto related, but often he could also perceive the impact of that death on the family members remaining on earth. In several occasions, I saw him weep with emotion while describing how angels consoled the widows, how saints interceded for the orphans, and how the Virgin Mary enveloped with her mantle those who were paralyzed by grief. This suggests a profound interconnection between the Church triumphant in heaven, the Church suffering in purgatory, and the Church militant on earth, a connection that Padre Pio navigated daily. One of the most impressive characteristics of Padre Pio's visions was his capacity to perceive the exact moment a soul achieved eternal salvation, even in cases that humanly appeared hopeless. The case of Antonio Morelli, a man who had lived estranged from the faith for decades, perfectly illustrates this reality. Antonio had been a fervent Catholic in his youth, but the brutal tragedies of war and the loss of his family had plunged him into bitterness. For years, he lived an empty existence, denying the existence of the Creator and mocking those who maintained their faith. He was known in his village as a hard-hearted atheist. However, when he found himself agonizing in a hospital in Naples, alone and seemingly forgotten, Padre Pio had an extraordinary vision back in San Giovanni Rotondo. "I see a soul that is about to be reborn," the saint announced during evening prayer on August 15, 1959. The other friars looked at him, confused. A man who had lost his way in the darkness of the world has just found the light. His heart, hardened by years of pain, is melting like wax before the fire of divine mercy. The angels are singing with joy because a lost sheep has returned to the flock. Hours later, the nurse attending to Antonio in Naples phoned the convent. She reported that the man had passed away, but not before a miraculous change occurred in his final minutes. He had suddenly sat up, tears streaming down his face, and asked for forgiveness, begging for a priest to administer the last rites. He died clutching a rosary. Padre Pio had seen the spiritual reality of Antonio's conversion before the physical news ever arrived. The visions of Padre Pio also revealed extraordinary aspects regarding the intercession of saints at the moment of death. He frequently described how specific saints came to receive souls who had held a special devotion to them during their earthly lives. I have seen Saint Anthony of Padua carrying in his arms a soul who, during her entire life, had prayed to him every Tuesday. The saint related, "I have contemplated Saint Rita accompanying a woman who had endured a difficult marriage with heroic patience. I have witnessed Saint Joseph guiding fathers of families who had worked tirelessly for the welfare of their children toward heaven. This reinforces the Catholic belief that we do not die alone. We are met by a spiritual family that we have cultivated through prayer. Perhaps one of the most moving aspects of these mystical experiences was Padre Pio's ability to perceive the reunion of souls in the afterlife. The tragedy of the Benedetti family, who lost 3 children in a horrific accident, exemplifies this supernatural comfort. The grief of the parents was bottomless, a darkness that threatened to consume them. When the youngest of the siblings passed away in the hospital days after the accident, joining his brothers, Padre Pio described a scene that moved everyone who heard it to tears. "I see 3 little angels running to meet their baby brother," the saint narrated, his voice full of sweetness. "The 2 older ones take the little one by the hand and lead him toward a garden where the light is softer and the colors more beautiful than anything we could imagine on earth. Waiting for them, there are their grandparents, who extend their arms to embrace them all. And from the throne of the Most High, a voice full of tenderness says, 'Come, blessed of my Father, for you were innocent like doves and pure like the lilies of the field.'" This vision provided the Benedetti parents with the only solace that could possibly touch their pain, assuring them that their children were not lost, but safe and together. The precision of Padre Pio's visions often included details that could only be known by the families of the deceased. So in the case of Carmela Rossi, an elderly woman who had raised 7 children after being widowed at a young age, the saint described not only the moment of her death, but also the exact words she whispered before expiring. She says she can see her husband young again, just as he was on their wedding day. Padre Pio related to Carmela's weeping children who had come to him for comfort. He asks her if she took good care of the children God entrusted to them, and he responds to her with a smile that illuminates the entire sky. "You were the wife and mother I dreamed of when I asked you to be mine." The children were stunned. Their mother had indeed whispered those references to their father in her final delirious moments. Words Padre Pio could not have known naturally. Padre Pio's experiences also revealed the infinite mercy of God toward those who had fought against the faith. In a memorable occasion, he described the transit of a known local antagonist of the church who had dedicated years to publicly attacking religion. "His soul struggles in the final moments," the saint observed during one of his nocturnal vigils, wrestling in prayer for the man's salvation. But in the final instant, when he can no longer bear his pride, he pronounces a single word within the silence of his heart: "Mercy." And that single word opens the doors of heaven wide. Christ himself descends to receive him, for there is no greater joy in the heart of God than the return of a prodigal son. This confirms that the battle for a soul often lasts until the very last breath, and that God listens to the prayers of the heart even when the lips can no longer speak. As Padre Pio aged, his visions regarding the moment of death became more frequent and detailed. It was as if the veil between this world and the next was becoming thinner, almost transparent to his spiritual eyes. During the last years of his life, it was not uncommon for him to interrupt his daily activities to announce the passing of an acquaintance or to describe the transit of souls he had never even met. Brother Bill Martin, an American Franciscan who passed several months in San Giovanni Rotondo during 1967, documented one of the last public visions of Padre Pio on this subject. "We were reciting the rosary in the choir loft when the Father stopped suddenly," Martin recalled. "His eyes filled with tears of joy, and he began to whisper, 'How beautiful, how beautiful.' When we asked him what he saw, he responded, 'And soul has just entered eternal glory.' I could see the exact moment the gates of paradise opened to receive it. The angelic choirs were singing the Te Deum, while the saints came out in procession to welcome it home." These visions were not merely spectacle, they served a purpose. Through his experiences, the saint of Pietrelcina reminds us that death is not the end, but the true beginning. It is the moment when the soul, finally liberated from terrestrial limitations, can contemplate the infinite beauty of its Creator. His life offers a window into the reality that surrounds us, a reality of angels, saints, and a God who waits for us with open arms. For Padre Pio, the spiritual world was more real than the stone floor he knelt upon, and in his testimony, we find the courage to face our own mortality, not with fear, but with the hope of that same beautiful encounter he witnessed so many times.